So let me start this out. My name's Mike Gillette. I'm the town administrator. For tonight's presentation, I'll serve as the moderator for the discussion and the presentation. I'd like to start out by introducing folks that are in the audience from the town staff and task force. Randy Hyde is the chairman of the task force, is here tonight. She'll be one of the presenters. Pam Dukeman, the finance director, is here. She will be also part of the presentation. The police chief is here, Jeff Silva, and he's joined by two of his staff, Heather and George, who are here as well. Chief Silva will be doing some of the presentation as well. Tim Bonfatti, who's been the project manager for the town on this project from Compass and Associates, and they've been with the project both Islington Station and now the police station. Christine, who works in my office. Without her, we wouldn't have the organization here tonight, so I'm not going to not mention her. There are other people in the room, but those are the people that are part of the task force and part of this production, and the fire chief just joined us with those folks. I'm proud to be here tonight to present in front of you what has been 2 years worth of effort on this police station. It's a great deal of public involvement and process. Not only have staff and boards been involved, the planning board, conservation commission, the finance commission, the board of selectmen, but we've had a number of public hearings, whether it's in preparation to go to town meeting, whether it's at town meeting, or information sessions like we had here today. And what I'm proudest of, and I think we've gotten better and better and better over the 28 years that I've been here, is that we have these public information sessions, we have the public input sessions, and we listen carefully to what is said and what is mentioned in the way of comments or questions, and to the extent possible we incorporate it. We're always trying to better the project. I think today we've got 2 years worth of efforts, 2 years worth of comments that we received from the public that have been incorporated into what we're presenting to you today, and ultimately we'll be presenting to town meeting for funding this year. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to present a final product. There won't be any further improvements. We've already got to the point where we bid the project. We've fully designed it, we bid it, and now down to selecting the final bidder, getting ready for a contract that will be let if town meeting approves it on May 2nd. So we're at the final stages of that process. But we do want to answer any questions. We do want to have your input into what you're seeing here tonight. The way this will run is the presentation will be made, the PowerPoint presentation. At the end of the presentation, then I will come and ask people to identify themselves, to have questions, where you're from, and then we'll have somebody responding to the questions that you have. The objective here tonight will be to have this concluded around 9 o'clock. We have to go to 9 o'clock. Try not to go beyond 9. In order to start this, we're going to start with a film clip, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nancy Hyde for the presentation.
Work with is very much undersized and very much lacking in what they need for the basic resources for their department to do this job.
We know we need a police headquarters replacement. We've had a building in place that was built in the 60s that is not only old, but extremely small, cramped quarters, was built in a different era of policing.
They are simply bursting at the seams, and there are safety-related issues as well. When we were designing the communication center in there, which is really the nerve center, the 911 center, one of the things that we looked at are the national standards around that, and we clearly did not meet those standards.
The building was built in the 1960s, and again, the farm was about half the size it was. So it was built, it was sized for the number of officers we had at that time, being 15. So you can imagine just doubling that capacity now. Not having enough lobby space. Again, not having adequate space for female officers, which in this day and age is definitely not enough. We really need to make sure that we treat all the people equally and equitably. And I think the way the station was constructed, we weren't doing that. It wasn't fair to the police department.
It fails at a regulatory level. It's not handicap compliant. It's not ADA accessible. It doesn't address any of the needs of a society that wasn't even envisioned in the 1960s when this was built. I see the looks on people's faces when I go around the community talks and they say, you realize last year we answered quite a few calls for service. Anybody have any idea? And the hands go up and they say 200, 300, 500. I said, no, 17,000. They say 17,000. I said, absolutely. So those are police-only calls. I'm not talking about the calls that come into the police station, because our dispatchers here at the police station dispatch all the 911 calls from cell phones in town, all the police calls, all the fire calls, all the ambulance calls. But those are police calls only. And they're shocked. And I said, it's pretty busy, isn't it? I said, it sure is. I said, I agree. But I said, this year in 2015, we answered 28,000 calls for service. And they almost fall out of their chair. And they say, I never knew that. I tell them we made 600 arrests. They said, well, you never hear about that. And I said, well, why would you?
It became clearer and clearer that University Station was going to get redeveloped, and we were going to see some change in new growth revenue.
We've designed a very attractive building that will be located right next to Town Hall, so we wanted it to complement the beauty of Town Hall. And we wanted to have a building that's highly functional.
It's exciting to see this project finally coming to fruition. I think it's been something that's been talked about for a long time, and I think it's long overdue.
I have a high regard for Westwood. It was a great town, it was a great community, I enjoyed working there. And seeing that, and it goes back to this whole notion about investments. And finally seeing the town willing to make that investment in its police department speaks volumes to me. Because I know they have a high regard for it, but this is actually now not just their words, but it's their actions.
If the only tool you have is a hammer, you have to approach every problem like it's a nail. Famous quote. This is a very old hammer in a broken down toolbox, and we're trying to respond to a myriad of modern day problems. We want to provide the absolute best service we can. We want to provide the most professional service we can, and we want to do it in our residents in a way that they deserve, in a way that matches the level of service that we have community-wide. And this building just isn't capable of doing that. We're talking about your own police department. This isn't my police department. Someday I'm going to die. This is not the police department of the officers that work here. Certainly we're providing service while we're here. But this is your police department. You live in this town for a reason. You have police and public safety officials for a reason. And we want to do the best job we can do for you.
I'd like to start out also by thanking everybody who's joined us here tonight. It's a great turnout, and it's really, I'll echo what Mike said. We've really appreciated all the public participation along the way. We hope that tonight is very informative for you, and a few of us will cover background, where we are, how we got to the design of the building we have, the financing, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So I'd like to start out by taking a bit of a step back. You've heard we created a task force. These are the people that we had serve on the task force over the past couple of years. We have volunteers from the community, from various town boards, and several people from the town administration. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we have Nora Lockney here, who is now our community director and serving as our town planner for a number of years. The timeline that we've been following does go back to the summer of 2013. It coincides with the approval of University Station that occurred at the Maytown meeting that year. That summer, we created the task force to look at our public safety facilities overall. Our priority item at that time was the fire department because of the growing need created by the pending development of University Station, and also the ordering of equipment, the expansion of staff, and the status of the Islington Station, which was extremely small, old, and would not be able to accommodate the growth of the department. However, when we started the task force, we looked broadly at both fire stations, the headquarters on High Street, the Islington substation, and the police station. We were trying to address comprehensively, what should we be doing? Should fire have 3 stations? Should police headquarters be combined with the new fire station? If so, where should they be located? And we went through an exhaustive process of looking at all options. And as you all know, with the fire station, we concluded that we would build a new substation on the same site. We had also concluded that at this point in time, we did not need a 3rd substation in proximity to University Station. We felt that it was better to watch how that evolved and look at the needs, but the geographic location of the 2nd station was extremely important, and we felt that for now and for the near future, having the station remain in the Islington Center as it is now was the way to go. We had considered combining the police headquarters with that, but could not configure the real estate to have sufficient land to combine the two. So as we proceeded with Fire Station 2, we continued our analysis of the police headquarters. We advanced the fire station to the approval level of town meeting last year, and as you know, that's under construction. But we took steps along the way to get approval from town meeting to design both buildings. And most recently, in the November town meeting, we had articles that allowed us to do what I refer to as enabling projects, allowing us to do the Deerfield Avenue extension, configure parking so that should town meeting approve the funding of the police headquarters, we would have everything ready. But regardless, we knew we needed to do something about the Deerfield Avenue cut through behind the American Legion and back of the police station and behind Town Hall. That's not a road, those are a series of parking lots. So we had always had a safety issue. We felt that it was justified to do that road work regardless, but certainly it enables us to proceed with the police headquarters. And then we come up to Maytown meeting, which is why we're here tonight to preview for you what we have gotten to with a design and a bid and what we're taking to town meeting for voters to decide if we can proceed. I just highlighted some things about what we've done over the years. This is a list, and for those of you who have a handout, you can look more closely. 2013, we began the process. 2014, we analyzed our options. 2015, the approval for the fire station, refining what we were doing for the police headquarters, and the approval that I just mentioned at the fall town meeting. When we started this discussion of the police headquarters, we needed to understand beyond just the small size of the building and the age of the building, what were the other issues we needed to address when considering a new headquarters. So the current building is 6,000 square feet. It completely is undersized for the force today. It is built 50 years ago. Half of the building is below grade, the basement, where there's a meeting room and some storage areas, but it is a very small building. And for any of you who haven't been in it, there is a video clip you can look at online, I believe, but it is really a very small building. It presents safety hazards. The chief can go into more examples should questions go that route. When people are arrested and brought in, it's a very tight space. It's not safe in terms of if more than one person might be brought in at the same time. And that presents unsafe conditions both for detainees and for our officers. The building fails to meet regulatory and code requirements. Chief Chase was mentioning that at a national safety level, the building gets a lot of waivers because it's not compliant. But there are practical aspects. It's not accessible, not handicap accessible. And when the town has looked at building new buildings, as we did with the library, it was incumbent upon us to not only respond to the code requirements of ADA, but to do so in a very responsible way for our community. Because as people may know from the library, the prior library, it's very difficult for people to get downstairs to the children's section. And that's just not what a community government facility should be doing for the people of the community. So we know that's something we need to address, and the current police station is completely inadequate that way. We do now have a gender diverse workforce. We did not back in the 60s when the building, our current station was built. The situation for that is untenable. And Heather's here, maybe comments will come out, maybe somebody will want to ask about that, but we have a diverse workforce and we need to be responsible with regard to that. Evidence storage, that's changed over time. The requirements for retaining evidence has increased, the duration has extended, the amount of evidence retained is significant. We do not have adequate storage today. We know that's something we need to address in the new facility. The space in terms of locker rooms and bathrooms, no running water, no shower space, and that is indeed necessary for the police staff. We do not have that in the current facility. And something else, think about emergencies such as hurricanes or blizzards that come through. When those occur, our public safety personnel, leadership, DPW come together to plan for how to address the needs of the community, whether it be for temporary housing or whether there be road blockages or any unsafe situation. They come together to meet. We don't have an appropriate place for that to occur right now. It's generally done in the basement of the police station now, and we really need to have a more adequate emergency operations center. These are pictures of the current station. There are pictures online. It shows you some storage facilities where there are cabinets in the basement level, and one of the offices where we have 3 to 4 people sharing the same rather small office space. This is the site plan for the layout with the footprint of the proposed building. And what I want to highlight is the orange building that says Town Hall is indeed the footprint of the current Town Hall. Where you see parking lot straight below that, that would be around the area of the current station. And the blue footprint is of the proposed new headquarters. And there are new parking lots that are going to be added as part of the Deerfield Avenue extension I was referring to before. And if you move down to the lower right, you can see the Deerfield Avenue extension and the arrows pointing to that roadway. So that is what you see in process right now, that construction project. Within a few days, the Scout House will be removed. We've worked out arrangements with the Girl Scouts to build them a new facility down by the Hamlin School. That was also part of what was approved at the fall town meeting. And we will configure a more clearly delineated parking lot for the American Legion and have a safe roadway that will connect Westwood Glen Road at the top of the slide down to Deerfield Avenue and with sidewalks and appropriate lighting. So that's the layout of the site as proposed. I'm just going to highlight a couple things on the next, what the next 2 slides are about, and then I'm going to invite Chief Silva to come up and speak more specifically on the layout. These are the floor plans for the proposed building. The Public Safety Task Force, with the assistance of our consultants, looked at what the needs of the police department are. The consultants worked very closely with Chief Silva to talk about what isn't being addressed today, worked on configuring the space. When we first went through that exercise, it actually resulted in a building that was designed to be about 24,000 square feet. And that was just a stage in the process. And we challenged the consultants, the architects, to come up with a more efficient design. We wanted to be sure we were using space to their maximum capacity. So if you look at the upper left corner, and I know the color isn't very clear, but it's somewhat pinkish if you look at the handouts, where all the, what looks like chairs are. That's the Emergency Operations Center. That space will double as public community space. That's one of the examples of how we're utilizing space. And when we designed the library, and as we look at the police station, we wanted to be sure to have good community space. The library space, there are 2 meeting rooms at the front of the building on the first floor, heavily used space by the community. Different organizations in town, different government meetings, very high demand, and we wanted to be sure we added to that with this station. And I'm going to ask the chief to come up because I'd like him, being the user of the space and one who understands how the police department functions within the building, I'd like to have him speak to you about some of the highlights of what else is in the space.
Good evening. Those of you that I didn't get to say hello to, thank you for coming. And so, as Nancy mentioned, this is a much different and much more modern period police station than what we deal with now. And I'll highlight for you some of the key components. When we were talking about constructing a police station, and I've said this many times, you saw it in that video at the beginning of the presentation, this is not my police station, nor is it Sergeant Dare's police station or Officer Rose's police station. Certainly we work in it. We're the ones providing full-time police service. But as far back as the 1800s, somebody who, if you're a practitioner of criminal justice, you would learn about somebody called Sir Robert Peel. And he had his Peelian principles of policing. And one of his famous quotes is, the police are the public are the police. Police officers are those who are paid full-time to provide police service, but they do the things that everyone in the community should be doing. And so one of the things that was very important to me was to have community space in this building. What kind of things do we do in that community space? Nancy talked about some of them. Selectmen's meetings, town meetings, our Police Explorer program, which I know at least one person in the audience has a family member that's involved in that. That's an initiative that we do with young people in the community and the surrounding communities. We teach them about civic responsibility. It's not just a training camp or a grooming ground to be police officers. Some later develop an interest in criminal justice, but many don't. But we provide them an opportunity to engage in community-minded activities. That area in the front corner provides some of that function, in addition to police training that we're required to do on an annual basis. There are a number of uses for that right now we just can't do. It's literally like musical chairs with the spaces that we have. If you can imagine a room a tenth of this size that we have in the current building, at any given time we're trying to do annual training, officers are trying to do roll call, there may be vendors and workers in the building because everything is technology based and they need a table to bring their computers and their equipment in to work on and troubleshoot the equipment we have. You just can't do it. So that's an important feature of this building right here. As you go down the center corridor, which on the screen here, as Nancy points out, it's a different color, I think, than the handout. But you walk over here, you see 2 rooms that are dubbed interview. In fact, one is interview/family interview. Right now, we have 1 room in the entire police department to do what in? You name it. You come in and you have a follow-up regarding an auto accident that you had in town, and you want to talk to us further about it because you realize that there was more damage to your car or you found a witness that was driving by, we ask you to go into that room. If a police officer isn't interviewing somebody, which we do every single day, in which case you have to wait. But it depends on how long you have to wait, because there may have been a family disturbance or some sensitive incident that you need to speak to a police officer about. But you don't want to do it in our front lobby, so you have to wait for that too. Speaking personally, when I was applying for this job and it came down to the point where I had to fill out paperwork, I was about number 4, like in the deli counter with the intern chief at the time, waiting to get into that room because it's the only flat surface where at the table where the chief could speak to me. Ultimately, I ended up in his office writing on a clipboard on my lap. So this is a very important feature because we're here to provide police service to you in the town. And we don't want to conduct that outside on the sidewalk or out in the same front lobby where people come in and ask for directions or ask for copies of reports. And so we have 2 rooms there that can be either used independently or sometimes, imagine if you will, there's a family situation and you have small children, and the parent or the caretaker wants to come in with those children. But there's some things that we can't control that children are exposed to, but we certainly can control if they have to hear it. We don't want to add to their anxiety, so we have these rooms. Those 2 rooms have a window in it with a blind, and so that if a parent is in one room speaking to one of us, the parent's concerns can be allayed somewhat and look at the children in the room right next door, and vice versa. So that's a community-minded police department, as opposed to re-victimizing the victim and not providing the privacy that people need. An important component of the police station. If you go to the far right, which is in blue, that's actually 1 level. The building itself is 2 levels. It's built on a slab. That's where the processing area is for detainees. Many, many times, I hear people ask me, and I mentioned it specifically in the video, you have cells in Westwood? I said, well, yes. Do you arrest people? I said, we do. Last year it happened about 600 times, and they just don't believe it. They're astounded. And they say, well, gee, I don't hear about that. I don't see that when I see the police log in the local paper. In the very fine print, you'll see excerpt from the Westwood police log. The function of that paper isn't to broadcast people's business. The function of that paper is to show, in my opinion, some of the more civic-minded things that the police department does, to paint the community accurately as a very safe, very engaged, appropriate community to work and live in and maybe move into. And as you know, there's a lot of real estate in there. That doesn't mean they're being deceptive. It means that they can't possibly put every single thing in that paper. Why? We did 28,000 of those every single things last year. The paper would be longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey. And so we need an area to bring these prisoners, these detainees, and we need to do that in a confidential way. Right now, we pull up through that same back parking lot that people, if you take that route, as you drive through town, from parking lot to parking lot, we take the people out of the car for the world to see. That's not appropriate. These are people that may be in crisis. These are people that are absolutely constitutionally innocent until proven guilty. These are people that, for whatever reason we had to deal with them and engage with them, we certainly are not out there trying to bring people in the public eye. But we have no choice. That's what happens. And so then we go through the parking lot, up the stairs, into a central corridor, the same corridor that we use to walk our adolescent explorers in and out, the same corridor we walk our employees come in and out of, the same corridor where the public comes into. If it so happens that their number is up at the deli counter to go in the 1 room that we have, you need a place to bring these people safely and securely with dignity. Right now, when you come to the front window of the police station, if you've been in there, you might notice that the windows are tinted. Why? Because when you're at the front window, it's a direct line of sight right back to the booking room. So imagine yourself, for whatever reason, because it was a computer glitch with the registry of motor vehicles, or a family disturbance, or a problem with one of your children or grandchildren, and they happen to be in the booking room, and your neighbor comes in to ask for a copy of an accident report, and you slide open that window, and there they are. It's not appropriate. In fact, with some of the information that we display on the computer screen, it's unlawful. You can't disseminate that information, you have to protect it. And so that's why we tinted the windows in the lobby when you come in. Off-putting, perhaps, the lesser of 2 evils, I submit to you. And so this is an area where you can safely and securely and with dignity bring the detainees that happen with regularity into the police station, into areas that meet code. There are a myriad of code requirements that exist today in 2016 that weren't even envisioned in the 1960s. A time when you could literally go from arrest to conviction, like watching a TV show now, 60 minutes with commercials. There was no evidence storage requirements. There were no requirements that you had to process things in a certain way, even anticipating appeal. It didn't happen then, but it happens now. There are health regulations, there are accessibility regulations. All things that don't exist now, it's an absolute necessity. Every year we get waivers, whether it's for the cell block, whether it's for accessibility. When the fire department comes in and does many of our inspections in terms of code, they say, okay, you can operate, but you shouldn't have things stored in the boiler room, or you shouldn't have things stacked in here. This, if you were a business, would be telling you you have to move it. We're a business, we're in the customer service business, but where else can we put it? We certainly can't store it outside. And so this is an area that allows those 2 bays, allow for one for officers to pull up, as I mentioned,
The door opens up, the police car drives in, the door closes, it's safe, it's secure, it's private. The second bay, if it were a situation where we bring in multiple detainees, people ask, does that happen? That happens too. The expression, it takes two to tango, also applies to police work. You're able to separate people. You can also store vehicles. In an age with distracted driving is all over the news, and you have car accidents because people are texting, or maybe somebody's drinking and driving, or a vehicle is a component of evidence for the case. Where does it go now? It sits in an open tow lot behind a fence, with tow truck workers coming in and out, with people coming to claim their cars. What anyone who's in the crowd who's in or around the legal profession will tell you is about one defense motion away from getting tossed right out of the case. This allows officers to secure a vehicle, to secure any evidence that we need in a fashion that meets the modern codes and the modern operational requirements that in 1960 were not here. Police departments cannot control the requirements and the laws that exist. They're state mandates, but we're subject to them. So when they change the law, they don't do a survey and say, can you accommodate this? Because if you can, it's okay. They say, here's the new law, here's the new standard, here's the new requirement. And so you either meet that standard or you don't. And right now, we do the best we can, but we don't. And so these are some of the critical components of this floor plan right here. In the back, you see, second from the bottom, an area for the supervisors. Right now, the slide that you saw with 3 people in an office, what you would see if you're familiar with the building was a vault door open. So that's not only one person's office, it's an office that multiple people use at once. It also has a vault in it where we keep things that we need to secure, like pepper spray or equipment, so you have people in and out of that office. So imagine, if you will, in your own professional work setting, you're a supervisor, you're trying to have a confidential conversation with one of your employees about any one of the number of things you'd have a conversation about. Oh, excuse me, I have to come in here. How does that happen? Well, I can't have this conversation with you because I need the computer. I have to sit down, I have to type a report. The shift's ended, or it's going to be over in 20 minutes and the new shift's coming. But there's no computer, there's no desk, there's nowhere to sit. So you take a laptop and you spin it around on the other side of the desk. To say that's not private is putting it mildly. This allows an area for supervisors to actually have a work area, to sit down where they have a computer where they can have their own files. They have a small circular table in the middle where if they need to call an employee in, and it happens every day, not necessarily in a punitive fashion. It's supervision. It's talking about people's problems. It's dealing with your employees and the people you care about in a confidential fashion where it's not out there in that same one room that we use now. Sergeant, can I talk to you? Just a minute, you're number 5 in the deli line. That's what we're dealing with now. So this is an opportunity to do that, again, with dignity, with professionalism, and in a way that meets not only best practices, but confidentiality requirements that we have. Certainly, we always worry about people's rights that we deal with, but employees have rights too, and we have to be respectful of that. So those are some of the critical components, I think, of the first floor. I won't bore you with the details of every room, and I'm certainly happy to answer questions for you later on. But on the first level, those are some things that are very important. I can go to the second level now. The second level here, the area looks like red to me from here. Those 2 areas are the locker room areas. I say locker rooms because we have male and female police officers. How about that? As much as this is unbelievable, this is in a world where we have over 50% of our population are women. Policing has largely been a boys' club. I've been doing everything I can to break that, and so have other police departments. But right now, we don't even have locker rooms, period, much less anything that you would even qualify as a locker room for the females. I can get Officer Rose up here, and I'll do that in a minute, and let her explain to you what she goes through when she's at work. But I can tell you that the male officers don't have it much better. So currently, the male locker room in our building is in the basement, below grade. Used to be a pistol range many years ago. Some of you may remember that. That was converted into a locker room because they needed to break up what used to be the locker room on the ground level of the current police station and reconfigure the building. So when they moved downstairs, The only running water that room has ever had is when our police station flooded last year and water came through the floor, through the ceiling, on top of the lockers. We had to call Chief Scoble's staff to come with fans and vacuums and tarps to try to get it dried out. It's the only running water it has. No restroom facilities, no shower facilities. We're talking about lockers like you might expect to see here in the school. I've had people ask me, why do you need lockers? I don't understand. Are you police officers? You don't need to lock anything. The gear that we wear is ever changing and it's bulky. You can look at it. This duty belt here alone, bulletproof vest, boots, raincoats, winter coats. When my officers come to work, they don't know where they're going to be. They show up for a shift and we say there was a car accident here, you're going to be standing outside guarding the scene for the next 3 hours. So they have to carry every single thing they needed on their back. It would look like an army rucksack. Back and forth, it's impossible to anticipate what they need. They have to store that. In addition, they need to store it securely. Many of my officers have families or will be starting families, and they can't have their weapons and their equipment in their houses around their small children, unless for whatever reason they have the space and the means at their house to create some type of a safe or a vault. It's not practical. Also, all the trainings we go to, and all you have to do is turn on the news and see police officers are a target. Thankfully, it hasn't happened in this community, but we don't know when that's going to happen. Columbine was a nice community too before something happened there. Everything is a nice community before and after something happens. It's just sometimes things happen. When you put on this uniform, as much as it can be a sword to protect the innocent, if you will, sometimes you need it to be a shield because the officers themselves are under attack. So trainings are telling our officers, come to and from work in your civilian attire so people don't see you dressed like a police officer. Take different routes home every day. Store your gear at the station. That's one of the things you need locker space for. I've had people ask me, well, why do you need showers? Don't your officers shower at home? So far as I can tell, they do. But the problem is that when you work in an office environment or another environment, you're not often getting blood, urine, other unsavory bodily fluids splattered on you, thrust on you, spit. It happens. When does it happen? All the time. And so my officers don't have the luxury of saying, oh, stop, you just bled on me, I'll be back, I gotta go, I'm gonna leave the emergency, I don't know, you're on your own. So they need to come back. They need to have gear in their lockers, spare uniforms. They have to shower. They have to decontaminate. The only way they can do that now is with a garden hose outside the building. You need space for your officers. Our female locker room that we have now was a makeshift room that's outside of a paper shredder, a photocopier, and a fax machine. All items that I'm sure you'll all agree are not used in a modern-day office facility. Those never get used. I'm sure where you work, your printer, your fax, and your paper shredder go unused. At the police department, they're used all the time. And so imagine, if you will, you're a female police officer, you come into work, you step into the locker room, and when the door opens up for you to go into the locker room, there's someone at the shredder, the photocopier, and the fax. It happens every day. In fact, if Officer Rose can just come up here for a minute, I hate to put her on the spot, but I don't think she minds. We're very proud of her. Officer Rose is one of our newest hires. She was a coach. She was a teacher. She's very community-minded. Many of you have met her already. She went with Officer Brent to the Boston Police Academy when we hired her. They started out with about 70? 90. And so when they graduated, Officer Brent was number 1, Officer Rose was number 4, and it was neck and neck. At any given day, every time of the day, those numbers would switch. So I say to you, tied the chin-up record at the Boston Police Academy. So for everyone who said, do you have female police officers? Do you need female police officers? That's 1961, it's calling, it's telling you it's time to go back. So these are the kind of police officers that we hire. She's an outstanding example. As you can tell, I'm very proud of her. I'd just like to hear from her what it's like to work in that type of facility.
Thank you, Chief. Right, as Chief just said, my name is Heather Rose. I come from West Roxbury, just a few pounds over. I enjoy my job very much, absolutely. There are some things that are definitely little hiccups along the day, though. Right from the get-go, I come in, park my car, walk down that hallway where I see families coming into the interview room, people coming in for any sort of thing, if the sergeant's talking to one of their employees, whatever it may be. Then I go down my lovely hallway into my locker room. Now, as Chief stated, there is the photocopy machine, the fax machine, the paper shredder. So yes, when I go into the office, my locker room, when I walk in, I see everyone, I say hello, and then I'm in there and I'm changing, and then that door opens because another female officer needs to come in through that locker room to use the toilet. But what happens is, they open that door and there I am, changing. Because as Chief also stated, we don't want to come into work in our uniforms. We don't want to have that target on our back. I don't want to have that target on my back. So again, I'm just like everyone else. I like to come in my civilian clothes, so that way I'm not that target. When I come into my locker room, I change. More often than not, and I can't even count how many times it actually has happened, that door opens, and then everyone does the freeze for a good 10 seconds. It's that awkward silence. How you doing today? I'm great, thanks. And that happens. On another thing to touch upon, Chief stated that, we have that lovely shower, aka the garden hose out back. Again, as police officers, we work multiple shifts in a day. We're working details in 95 and 3 heat. I like to look professional and clean and put together. I'm working detail from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. in 95-degree weather with my vest on, with my uniform, all my gear, an additional 40 pounds on me. I'm sweating out there. Anyone would. So when I come into work and I want to look presentable for you guys, because that's the town I'm representing, then all of a sudden I can't take a shower to put myself together for work. I don't like the way that feels. And we laugh about it at times, because the infamous statement that was gone around is, I've learned in the past 10 months how to take a real good bird bath. I don't know if any of you enjoy taking a bath in a sink in a bathroom, but it's not a great way to clean yourself up. You do what you can with what we have right now, but I absolutely am an advocate for all the things that we need. It is undersized. We don't have the amenities that we need right now. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them as the night goes on. But again, thank you for coming. Thank you for welcoming me into your town. And I'm just here for you guys. Thank you.
So, there you heard it from one of our officers, one of your officers firsthand. That's the most prominent feature on the second floor. We have some public space in the top corner. That's a smaller conference room. That may be available for any one of a number of reasons. When we get task force or smaller groups together, to leave availability in the larger room downstairs, not dissimilar from the library with the larger community room and the smaller room on the other side. You'll see that they're both used heavily if you're over in that building at all, and it gives you the flexibility to accommodate the public and accommodate operational needs based on the size and the training that you're doing. Along the right side are some administrative space. As you can see, it's relatively de minimis in regard to the operational needs, and you also have some secure supply and evidence storage in the center. So, again, we can answer these in more detail, but I think it's important for you to hear firsthand from the people that are actually in the building and the people that are actually bound by the rules and the regulations and the laws and the code requirements, and they're using this building every day to understand what it is that we do and why it is that this space is needed. I can tell you we spent a lot of time talking about the size of this building. Before I give it back to Nancy, I put this to you. You saw Commissioner Haas in the video, was the former chief of Westwood. He was here 20 years ago or so. Some of the same members of the Board of Selectmen, but a different Board of Selectmen, same town administrator, different FinCom, said this station is too small. Did a study, made some estimations, said, it should probably be somewhere around 20,000 square feet. Commissioner Haas goes on, Chief Chase comes in, says this building is way too small. We need to try and continue with some of the interior movement and renovation of what we did with what we have, but this doesn't meet the standards. We're doing combined police fire dispatch. This cell block doesn't work. Different Board of Selectmen, different FinCom, impact study, talking about what was then Westwood Station, analysis of the building, end result, you need a police station that's about 20,000 square feet. Fast forward 2013, this task force, different Board of Selectmen, different FinCom, different members, analyze the needs of the police department. You'll see a slide about comparable communities. We've tried to learn from some of their mistakes and enhance the efficiencies. Originally, we started out slightly larger. We come to you with a proposal for a police station that is, you guessed it, about 20,000 square feet. So this is something that's well thought out. I humbly suggest. It's been thought about for a long time. This isn't just an idea that I hatched. This is an idea that a lot of people have been speaking about for 20 plus years. So I'll let Nancy continue with the presentation. We'll be here to answer any questions you have, but I thank you for your attention. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Chief, and Heather, thank you. Tonight, we wanted to add the voice of people in our police department. We did not have that element in our prior presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I think it gives you a real sense of their engagement in this and their understanding of the needs, so thank you for your comments. Before we leave this slide, I just want to comment on the lower right corner of the slide. Okay, I'm going to go back 2 slides. See the blue? Now that's the first story that the Chief was talking about. There is no second story to that space. What we have done, though, is designed it so that if in the future we don't know what the needs are of the town, the building is structurally capable of having a second floor put above it. We're trying to think ahead as we've approached this whole thing. We've done so not saying what do we need to address today, but what do we need this building to be for decades to come? And you know, while we've been in the current station for 50 years, it is not satisfactory for a couple of decades, if not more. So we are trying to be smarter and wiser and more long-term focused than we were back then. The Chief mentioned that we've done things to try to understand why is a 20,000 square foot building appropriate when we have a 6,000 square foot building now. One of the things our consultants did for us is looked at the broad categories of the space and compared the current space and the square footage associated with these categories to the proposed building. And you can see staff contributes, the growth in staff contributes a significant portion, almost 50% of the growth in space. We have the better booking facilities, Chief went into that already, meeting code requirements, 3,500 square feet. Evidence is a smaller amount, but still much better than what we have today. The EOC, the community rooms, space we really don't have now, and then storage space. So we're trying to reconcile this approximately 14,000 square foot increase in space. The other thing we did is we looked at comparable communities who have built facilities in the past 10 years. Some of them are combined facilities, so we did our best to extract what would a standalone police station that was combined with fire have been in square footage if it was a building on its own. To the far left, you can see the existing facility is at the low end of the benchmarks that we looked at. So we quantified population, we know, the number of full-time employees we know, and the size of the buildings. And we calculated the square foot allocation per staff member as a measurement tool. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a calculation that we could say, well, if this is what we have today, and here are the other communities and what they've built, and you can see it really goes up to a much higher amount of square footage. Where does this new building fit in? And you can see the proposed Westwood Station. So that was just a gauge for us to say we are not out of the ballpark with a building of this size. Actually, we're still off the middle to the low end of comparables that we looked at. So this is a rendering of the new station. We have a picture over here you can look at when you finish up. You've seen it on the headline slide. What we did with the architects is we specifically tasked them with designing a building that would be sitting right next to Town Hall, and we didn't want it to be fighting Town Hall. We didn't want it to be a design of the 21st century that was not compatible with the iconic Town Hall that we have, which is actually a 100-plus-year-old building. And so we asked them to design something that was complementary and yet its own building. And after a lot of discussion, and believe me, a lot of discussion and a lot of opinions, this is the design we landed on, which I have not heard any complaints about. Maybe beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I think this is a building that we should all and will be all proud of. A view from High Street, this is a perspective of the rendering of the building relative to Town Hall. Now, it's a bigger building than Town Hall, set back slightly so that the scale of the building does not overwhelm Town Hall. And we have elements that draw from the Town Hall design. As you can see, the archways, the windows over the left side of the police headquarters, and the roof line. And so that's where the architect picked up on design elements. So the project budget that we have been working with, and this was the working model going into actually putting it out to bid, had the first line item, the construction budget, being around $11,200,000 to a high of almost $13 million. We built in a rather large contingency because we reflected back on last year, and in fact, when we went out to bid for the fire station in Islington, we were quite surprised when the bids came back that they were in excess of our estimates, and the estimates were 2 months old. We have a cost estimator go through. It's not an arbitrary number. It was with a lot of work. And it was an environment last spring where there was the element of a strength in the economy, but also the bad winter that caused so much structural damage to buildings that the tradespeople were high demand and not enough supply. So pricing went up accordingly. It's the supply and demand scenario. And when we took from that and looked to the police headquarters, we said we need to be more cautious in terms of this estimating because we don't know where the market is as we go into this. It hasn't been that long since we bid out the fire station. I'm happy to tell you tonight that based on the bids that came in, we will be at the low end, if not below the low end, with the pricing. So we were very conservative as we determined how would we fund this, what would the borrowing article look like. We are really, it's extraordinary that we can do this and come out with a project that is close to that $14 million all in with all the line items you see here. So that is on the heels of what happened at the fire station. Good news. Thank you. Well, you know, and the other good news is it looks like we'll get the best contractor out of the group from the bidding because we go with low bidding. So we're really pleased with who the low bidder is. So that is in process being finalized, and we hope and we plan to report to the Finance Commission Monday night the actual package amount of the whole the cost and the contractor who we hired. So it's raining good news right now. The financing, Pam, at what point would you like to join me? I'll do a couple more and then you'll come up. What we did leading up to now, so I told you we're really close to wrapping up with what the cost is, but in looking at the impact on the town's budget, we estimated the low cost on a 3% borrowing for 20 years or 3.5% rate and borrowing for 30 years. Many large projects in municipalities these days are being funded with 30-year bonds. And the rates are still very favorable, and the users will be hopefully in the community for a long time, but it's more matching the lifespan of the project. And so we have a range of cost estimates. So as it's looking now, and Pam will comment further, it looks like our annual debt service cost, if we borrow it 30 years at an estimated rate of 3.5%, will be close to $700,000. Where you can see from this, if we did it for 20 years at a higher project cost, it would be over $1 million. And that's a significant difference, but those are the numbers that we were testing to make sure we could bring forward a project that we could accomplish. And again, great news that we're at the low end. Something else I want to do, I just want to give you a context because some of these slides are actually responsive to questions that we've been receiving over the course of the past several months from the community, from the Finance Commission. We have a long-range financial planning committee in this community. Many people from different boards serve on it, and we project out the capital projects and the operating budgets for the town going forward. This is capturing a list of the primary capital projects as we see them today. You can see 2016, the police headquarters we're talking about. And as we look ahead 6 years, and maybe in some cases these won't happen until beyond that, we know that the school system is talking about doing something with the 5 elementary schools. whether it be new build or redevelopment, rehabilitation of those buildings, is yet to be determined. But we know that that is something that the town will be considering in the future. We also know that the fire station that we have, which we will keep, is in need of renovation. So when we do that, and to the extent we do that, is the next phase of our task force work. Our 100-year-old plus town hall is a great building, but functionally not so great. And I would say one of the more obvious ways it's not so great is technology. With the computer systems and everything else that go in buildings, it's been very hard to jig the town hall to be effective. We do it, we do the best we can, but that's also a building where we're having people work out of basement levels, and that really isn't the way we should be going. Senior Center, it's been around here for a while now, we're very proud of it. It could use the renovation and some expansion. It's a highly utilized building, and it's wonderful for our seniors. Public Works is in need of improved garage facilities, and lastly, the idea of a new construction for a community recreation center is something we have on the horizon. And I will tell you that even as we look at the projects going forward, we look at what we have and what should we retain. And we have an Islington task force going on right now, looking at the opportunities that a developer has for new building, but also what should we do with the town's existing inventory of space. We have the branch library, we have the Islington Community Center, we have a parking lot. So there are a lot of things that we're looking at, and we look broadly at the town to make sure that the buildings we have we want to keep, or decide if we do want to divest of any. So it's a very comprehensive analysis we do of all this. For here, I just want to highlight a couple things. This is a detailed slide, better on the handout. We look at the history of our borrowing projects. This is a slide of things we've done outside of Proposition 2.5, where we've had capital overrides. It goes back to the early 1990s, the school projects, a total of $63 million. The largest contributor to that is the new high school. Municipal side, our projects outside 2.5 are fewer. You can see mostly road improvement type things, but also we have our beautiful new library. In contrast, we have many capital projects we have been able to do within 2.5. So we do it within the tax revenues we raise and the other revenues we have available to the town. So it kind of flips on this one, where we have fewer school projects done within 2.5, albeit we do have some. And many of our municipal projects are smaller, and we're able to borrow and take care of those within 2.5. And then we have our sewer projects, which are funded separately by sewer revenues. So I'm going to turn it over to Pam Dukeman, who is going to give you your financial update on all that we look at with this, because again, there are many elements that go into bringing this recommendation forward, and Pam is our finance director and our go-to person for analyzing the finances for this project.
Okay, as Nancy said, I'm going to give you a little overview of how we paid for this project, and more importantly, how does paying for this project fit into everything else that the town needs to do. So first, when we look at the town finances, when we talk about our town finances, that addresses many areas, and you can see on the slide here. We talk about our operating budget. That's what we pay for our school and municipal annual operations, where we run the school department, pay for our teachers, pay for our police and firefighters, pay for our DPW workers. We also have to provide for our capital budget. We need to maintain our roads, we need to maintain our buildings. We need to make sure that police and fire have safe and efficient equipment to do their jobs, as well as the DPW. We also have, as a town, long-term liabilities. Those would be our pension obligations and our OPEB obligations, which is our post-employment retirement costs for retirees, healthcare costs. We also have reserve accounts. The town needs to maintain a certain amount of money in the bank. When we go out to issue bonds, we have a credit rating. The rating agencies, Moody's and Standard & Poor's, would look at what do we have in reserves to protect the town against emergencies. So we have to take care of reserve accounts. We also have to look at how does doing all of that impact the tax bill. We are a typical suburban community in that 80% of our revenue comes from our real estate taxes. So everything we do and try to do in the different areas, we have to see how does that impact our tax bill. It's a very delicate balance. We're trying to make sure we're addressing all of the areas. As a town, if we put too much effort into one area at the expense of the others, we fail as a town. So if we build those reserve accounts too high, higher than industry standards, we would not have sufficient revenue for our operating budgets. So we would not be able to provide for our school budget or public safety budgets. If we put too much money into the operating budgets, we don't have enough for capital. And we would not have the safe equipment that our police and fire and DPW need to do their daily jobs. We would not have safe buildings for school children. If we don't address those long-term liabilities, the pension and the OPEB, then we're just pushing that problem down the road and forcing our children to deal with that at a much greater impact. So we're really trying to balance all that, and then again, importantly, how does that impact the tax bill? Because we could do lots of great things in all kinds of areas, and if we're not mindful of what that's doing to our tax bill, we fail. So it's a very difficult balance, but the Board of Selectmen and everyone involved in our budgeting process works very hard to make sure we're looking at all of those areas. As Nancy mentioned, we do have a committee in place, the Long Range Financial Planning Committee. It's been in place in town since 2003. You can see on the slide it's made up of numerous people from all areas in town. A member of the Board of Selectmen, a member of the school committee, three members from the Finance Commission, a member from the Planning Board, Board of Assessors, the tax collector, the town treasurer, the town administrator, the school superintendent, and 2 or 3 each year community at large residents representing the community. This is the group that's working to make sure that whatever we do in our finances each year address all those areas that we looked at on the first slide. We're always looking to make sure that we have a long-term perspective, that what we do today doesn't hurt us in the future, that we always know what's coming up. And Nancy went through the slide on that on some of the capital. So this group has worked real hard over the last 13, 15 years to make sure that the town is addressing all of the things we need to do in our finances. And we've really had some great success. The last several years, the town has had very well-funded operating budgets for the school and municipal departments. We've been able to make progress in building the reserves to levels that we need. We've been able to make some great progress addressing those long-term liabilities, our pension and OPEB obligations. And the result of that, the town does have a AAA rating from Standard & Poor's, and that really reflects all of this work, reflects that we're taking care of all of those different areas. And what that rating does is let us, when we go out to borrow money, get the best interest rate that we can so that we have the lowest debt cost for any project that we go out to borrow. Just looking for a minute at University Station revenue. We're in a much different position than we've been in other years, where we have the new project come online after many years of people working very hard to get that project. So now we have new commercial revenue coming from University Station. The Long Range Financial Planning Committee worked very hard before that project even was built to talk about what would we do with the new revenue when it came online. We wanted to make sure that we use that new revenue to address all of the areas that we've talked about, that we could use that money to make sure we kept moving forward in all of our different areas and not put all the money into one bucket. We're not going to spend it so quickly before it was gone. So we already had talked about, well, how would we use that money? First, you see on the left, direct service costs. There are some direct service costs associated with the project, and those were talked about when the town was just considering whether to allow that project to go forward. Those are mostly in the areas of public safety to service the project, and then the school system for the impact of any children coming to the residential component of the project. The second item we looked at was applying some of this money to our operating budgets. Under our regular Proposition 2.5 limits, we can only increase our operating budgets about 2.5% a year. That's really not sufficient to kind of maintain annual services for the school and municipal departments. So we talked about applying some money to allow those budgets to grow beyond that level. We looked at an area of needing some of that money for capital, that we could fund capital projects at a better rate than we could within 2.5, or that we could also use this money to increase our debt service so that we could keep projects within Proposition 2.5 and not have to go for debt overrides. And then we looked on the right at tax relief, that some of this new money, how could we use this to try to minimize the growth in the annual tax bill? That we know that's a concern, we can see that happening, and could we use some of this money to address that? So that was kind of in place before the money came. Now looking at, well, what have we done with the university station money? FY15, the top bullet on the left, the first year that we saw any new money, tax revenue from the university station. We had about $565,000 in new taxes that year, and that was used for direct services. That money that year was used for police and fire departments, and we did some additional staffing increases in both police and fire. FY16, our current year, the second bullet on the left, our final amount that we had in new revenue was $3.2 million, a significant amount of money coming to the town. And what did we do with that? We took $925,000 at the fall town meeting, so some of you who were there will remember that, and put it into a capital stabilization fund, an account that's reserved and can be used by future town meetings to vote for capital items. The other item we did, we took $1.57 million of that money and put it to the municipal and school operating budgets. As I mentioned, applying into those budgets so that they could grow beyond the 2.5% limit. And the detail of that 1.5 is in the chart on the right. So from the FY16 money, $1 million went to the school department and about $461,000 to the municipal department. So we applied that money directly to the operating budgets so that we could have sufficient level of services in school and municipal areas. Now looking, what are we doing for FY17, our budget year that would start July 1? It's estimated that we'll have about $2.6 million of new revenue coming in that we can apply from the university station project. We're doing the same thing. We're making sure that we're addressing multiple areas. So starting on the left, we've targeted $800,000 for debt service. And as Nancy showed you on a previous slide, that's the money that would let us do this police station project within Proposition of 2.5. We would not have to do a debt exemption or increase taxes for the project. The second line, applying money again to the operating budgets. So putting some of that money directly to the school and municipal budgets. The third item, direct service costs, about $200,000 for FY17. And in this year, that's going to go to the school department. They are now seeing some impact of children that are in the residential housing there, and they need some funds to accommodate that. We have made clear from the beginning with the University Station project that cost associated with that project would not impact what we're doing already in other areas of the budget. So the direct service cost this year will go to the school department. And then on the right, tax relief. $800,000 we've allocated to apply directly to tax relief. And I'm going to show you a slide on how we would utilize that money. I just want to point out one thing with this slide is, in this current week, heading into our final FinCom public hearings on Monday, we've had some slight adjustments to these numbers here as things have changed in the budget process. And where we are now with those adjustments does accommodate the school budget and what the superintendent had been requesting for the FY17 budget. So we've had a little bit of reallocation with that money, and we are in line. The school committee voted their budget last night, and we are in line for going to the final hearings on Monday. Just taking a look at tax relief and what we're talking about with that. So the chart we have here, the green bar on the left, shows the current tax bill for the average home in Westwood. The average home in Westwood is valued at about $560,000, and the bill this year is just over $8,600, shown in the green. Typically, that bill would increase for FY17 by about 3%, or as shown in the blue bar, to just over $8,800. The selectmen are proposing a couple of items to try to curb that growth, and the result would be the bar on the right, that the tax bill would be a 1% increase, or $89 increase over the current year. So what are the selectmen suggesting? We're showing that at the bottom. The actions they're taking. First, to keep the debt for this police station within Proposition 2.5, That would save the average home about $104 a year. So that blue bar in the middle would be higher by $104 if we vote this as a debt exemption outside Prop 2.5. So the selectmen are not going to do that. You saw the allocation that we could use some of the University Station money to keep this within. Second, the selectmen are going to continue to work on the commercial and residential tax split. We have a split tax rate in town where the commercial rate is a much higher rate than residential. That saves the average home about $1,100 a year. I'm not sure if people are aware of how significant that amount is by taxing the commercial at a higher rate. So the selectmen will continue that FY17. The third bullet, we have an article at town meeting to appropriate $500,000 of free cash, which is really just the town's retained earnings, specifically to reduce the tax bill. So it's a standalone article at town meeting. That will save that average home about $65 a year. And then finally, I mentioned the $800,000. We'll take $800,000 of University Station revenue and apply it directly to the residential tax bill. And that again is about $104 savings. So from the blue bar down to the green bar in total, $273 in savings. The actual bill will be the bill on the right. Again, a 1% increase or $89 higher than the current year, and lets us accommodate all the things we talked about earlier. Our school and municipal operating budgets, our capital items, and doing the police station within Prop 2.5. So again, working real hard to take the new money and apply it to several areas to keep the operating budgets and capital budgets going, but to be mindful of the tax bill. And this would be something we would look at every year, that as we get the new money every year from University Station, a piece would go to operating budgets, a piece to capital, but that we would be directing a piece of it towards tax relief. And finally, just to look at our debt levels, we have guidelines for how much debt we should carry as a town, the same as there are guidelines for what an individual homeowner should have for debt. Our current guidelines say that we should not have more than 8% of our money spent on debt. And that would be shown by the green bar on the left. And at 8%, that would be just over $5 million that the town, that would be the limit of how much we should be spending in debt. Our actual level is shown on the right. We're well below that, the blue bar on the right. The actual debt that the town has is really only about 3% of our revenue. So overall, the town carries a very low level of debt. And again, we have financial policies that dictate that, as well as industry standards that Moody's and S&P would look at and judge us on. So we do have the capacity to bring that new debt for the police station online and still be well below that level. And I think that's it for me. And Mike's going to come back up and summarize for you.
Okay, before we turn it over to questions and comments, I'm going to make a few summary comments to try and bring this all together for what we heard tonight. First, the police station we're currently operating in is a third the size of the smallest new station that's been built in the last 15 years. That's an indication that it's significantly undersized. I've got 3 chiefs and 2 interim chiefs that continually told me it was undersized. I'm an economist by training. Size is important for the efficiency of an operation. If a facility is too small, 1/3 the size of what it should be, people are bumping into each other. People are queuing up at a deli counter arrangement to have space to work with it. The efficiency of an operation is significantly affected by the size of the facility. You need a larger facility. The other point that was made tonight, and made often, is that the current facility just does not meet standard codes. We don't have handicap access. We do not have the ability to store evidence the way we should be. We can't accommodate our female officers. We can't accommodate our male officers in the way we should be accommodating them. We can't provide security or confidentiality to the people that have to come into the facility for whatever reason they're there, so that their integrity is protected. They're innocent until somebody decides differently. Third issue, Why now? Well, the way things operate on the capital side is, in Westwood at least, we try not to diminish the level of services we're providing to the community during even the tough economic times. We try to seek ways to continue to provide a standard level of service to the community. That means that if you're going to invest in other facilities, you need to wait for a debt service to come off, as it did, and we ended up with the Islington Fire Station. We replaced it, replaced debt that was coming off the books with new debt for the Islington Fire Station. The only other way to do it is to diminish services, whether it's school or municipal, in order to free up money that you can put into debt service to build a new facility. Or you get new growth, which we've seen in University Station. And that's provided us with this wonderful opportunity not to have to diminish the service to the community, but to have monies that are coming in, additional monies that are not allocated for any other purpose, to be able to separate those out to begin to address the facilities that need to be addressed. And the police station was the next on the list. It needed to be done, and we can do it. We can do it within 2.5, which means that we don't have to go out and ask you to agree to pay additional taxes in order to make this improvement. And we've done so in a very responsible way. We've done it in a way of extending the debt for 30 years instead of 20 years. And we've done it by making it as small a facility as we could possibly have, with expansion opportunity for the future, so we don't have to build a new station the next time. We can have the opportunity to expand it. So that's the argument. That's why we're here. That's why we're going to town meeting on May 2nd to ask the voters to say yes to funding of this project. Enough preaching. It's your turn. Questions?
Hi, my name is Margaret Carr. I have several questions. First of all, let me preface my remarks by saying I think that this should have been done 15, 20, if not longer, years ago. I think that our police station often reminds me of Mayberry on, with Barney Fife there. Thank God our officers are not Barney Fife. They are much higher quality officers. So I want to commend our police force. I think they're wonderful. Question on two things. When we choose a contractor, how are we going to do that? Because I have to say, I don't think the history of choosing quality contractors here has been good. I think the high school was a disaster. I think the library with ceiling tiles falling down a year after being built, clearly there was an issue with the quality of the contractor there too. So how can you ensure that we're going to have a quality contractor?
Well, I'm going to have Tim Bonifazzi, project manager, talk to that.
So that was a great question. So since the high school and the library, the state we've passed laws that have made public construction much better in terms of making sure you get a quality contractor. So one of the things that you do now is you pre-qualify contractors. So we got 4 pre-qualified contractors that bid on the police station. And those contractors were, so they went through a sort of regimented process to make sure that they were qualified. Fortunately, all 4 bid. The low bidder on the contract is the one that sort of on the project team we were targeting as being one that we wanted to get. Fortunately, it was low bid, so that was good. They're doing the Medfield station, which is going very well right now, so I don't think we'll have a problem with the contractor on this project.
Is it the same team of people choosing the contractor that choose the other 2 contractors? I
No.
understand you're saying the quality standards of how you look at a contractor, but I'm sorry, as a resident, I don't have a lot of confidence.
Well, the high school was I don't know, a while ago.
Wasn't that long ago?
Yeah, both of those contractors are not in business anymore.
That's no surprise.
No. surprise to anyone. But so the process is, there was not pre-qualification back then, so you basically had to take the low bid contractor.
Okay.
This process now allows you to qualify people before you have to take the low bid contractor.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Can I ask another question? I won't. This won't be as controversial, I promise. When we were showing the slides about the revenue that's coming from University Station, why was it higher in 16 than predicted for 17?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. That's just the new revenue that year, what we call new growth. So the big push was 16 when what you see was built. So there'll be new revenue each year after, but that was kind of when a lot of the revenue came in at once. So when we're showing now what's the estimate for 17, that's revenue beyond what we already have, not the total revenue.
So you're saying the total revenue is close to 5 million?
Yes. Yes, those pieces we were showing you, the new growth coming in.
Okay.
And I'll just add, University Station, which is roughly 5 million, as you just pointed out, is a little bit better than halfway through. So that means if the offices get built that are anticipated to be built, we will see that grow even further. There's potentially another couple million in just University Station.
I don't think I need that.
Yeah, we're trying to get it on the,
All of these numbers are theoretically beautiful, and I congratulate you for them. It's very nice. But I understand the schools are coming in with some outrageous request for funding. How does that line up with this?
So we had allocated in our, in the selectmen's original budget to have the operating budgets at about a 4% increase. That's really about what's a sustainable level for operating budget growth year to year. So when we look at the budget process, we're trying to look at, as we talked about, not having any one area grow so high that it impacts other areas or we can't sustain it going forward. So that was our original estimate. I think the school's original budget request came in at about 5.9%. So that was some of the discussion that you've seen going on, is that it was higher than that original estimate. But we looked and worked with the schools, and sometimes they have kind of unanticipated expenses that bump up in one year, maybe special ed costs. In that 5.9%, the original superintendent's budget had some University Station related costs within that numbers. So we've kind of worked with them to adjust that number. As I said, we've kind of pulled that out, the University Station cost. They need a bus to kind of go down and get the kids that are now down in those residents. We're going to pay for that with that direct service University Station revenue. So right now, the school budget we're funding is, I think, at about 4.5%. Really in line, as I said, a slight adjustment from the original base, and we're handling some of those other one-time items that they have, or University Station items, with different money. So at this point, we're good and comfortable with a different allocation. But it's a process we go through each year, just to make sure that our budgets are adequate and sustainable.
Is your question in part about the capital projects too, though, or the operating budget?
I'm not sure which budget I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, I understand that the schools are coming in with an outrageous request for funding, and it's way beyond 5.9% from what I understand. They're looking for all of the money from Westwood Station. I love the schools, but the accounting is a little out of whack.
They did ask for 5.9%. That was the ask. They are eager to do the best they can with the schools and may continue to ask for money beyond a 4.5%. What we have been able to work out with them is that their operating budget increase is just 4.5%, and some items are being funded, as Pam said, through University Station growth, so that's actually gotten them to the 4.5%, and some things are now being funded as one-time items out of capital money. So they have Chromebooks this year. It's one-time money that's not now in the operating budget. It will be funded with a capital allocation. and they have furniture, fixture, and equipment as a line item, one-time money. So they're good now.
So you're telling me that their request for outrageous funding is not going to affect this budget?
Correct. They may be eager to have more, but we're good this year. And it's a balance, as Pam said. We are constantly trying to find a balance. We want to have the best school system. We want to have the best police force, the best fire, but we have to be practical with our taxpayers' money.
Are any of these things you're saying, could they be impacted by the town meeting? In other words, could they pack the meeting and request more money and get it? by having
My
more
understanding, and we do have a school committee member here, is that they are satisfied, and the school committee and the school department will not be going to town meeting to ask for more than what is being presented to Finance Commission Monday night for the budget. Could somebody do that? Yes, there are processes at town meeting to do that. I think Pam, you've heard her tonight, you probably heard her at town meetings, she's pretty compelling. She's got great knowledge of the facts of the town's finances, and town meeting ultimately gets to decide. But the school committee did approve the budget request in line with what we presented tonight, and they will not be leading an effort to request more money at town meeting as we know it today.
If they do, and they do get what they want, will that affect this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Three-part question, please. Well done on the presentation and for both the station and the finances.
That's your name.
Michelle Brennan. Three-part question, please, on this slide. The first is, what is Blue Hills /
So in the current, so the main area in the current year that we allocated money to the operating budget went to school and municipal. That other category, Blue Hills there is the Blue Hills Regional School District. And just last year, I think from our original budget until town meeting, the assessment went up. It varies slightly every year depending on how many children attend. And so some of the money we had to allocate to that just to balance out for town meeting with their assessment.
The 3.24 million on the left, the two figures under it do not equal that?
Right. Thank you. I should have addressed that. So we're showing 3.2 million came in. This is what we used. We didn't use all of it. And that really plays into the question that you asked on the next slide, you know, why am I showing next year 2-point-something million? When we applied money to the operating budget, it's really built into that budget forever. So when we when we appropriate money to the schools, they're using that to hire teachers. We don't come back in the next year's budget and say, well, maybe we're going to take that back. That becomes the base going forward. So we're showing you as this money comes in, what's built into the base. Anything that goes to the operating budget is kind of there. And that's why we're very cautious of how we build into the operating budget. Because it's just the nature of municipal government, the schools, and police and fire. We don't like to hire on one year and then the next year have to say, can we still afford that staff, or do we need to decrease? So when we apply it into the operating budget, we consider it gone forever versus the one-time items, one-time vote into a capital account. Well, the next year we get to consider that money again. What will we do? And the same as if we don't use it. So out of the 3.2, we used 925 one time, and we used the 1.5 kind of permanent. And that continues on each year. When we talk about, we have the 2.6. When I look at the next slide, that's kind of what's available to talk about in the budget process, either from new money coming in or from the money we didn't use permanently the year before.
Thank you. And final question, just curious, is there any debt coming off the books?
We do have some debt coming off the books this year and next. As Mike mentioned earlier, we used that debt coming off to fund the fire station debt. We were able to bring that project online with that bond replacing a bond that's dropping off. So we're always kind of looking at our debt coming on and off, but we did have some recent debt come off, particularly for the Carby Street Municipal Building. And with that debt dropping off, we were able to bring the fire station online and keep our debt budget level for that project.
every 2 years. First, would like to commend the police department. Some of those numbers surprised me, the arrests, et cetera, and I guess the comment I was going to make is that it's refreshing to live in a town where you feel safe and the police department does their job without a lot of fanfare or bad press or anything else. So that's a comment to not only the administration but everybody in the team, on the team. Okay, so that's first. Second, this is probably a little bit too late, and maybe I should come to more meetings. But since I've lived here, one of the things I think this town is lacking is a town green. In other words, a space that almost every town has. And as I look at the plan, it may be too late, but just a comment I'll make. It looked like there was an opportunity here to eliminate some of that parking in the front of the buildings, eliminate that extra driveway, which we now have 2 exits in and out, and a new road going out, and make that a town green. And just make it all green space in front. Now, I know the police cars like to come out that middle driveway because I live there, so I hear them. But it would seem that with the new road and the traffic light and the auxiliary road that's on the other side, that there might be an opportunity for the town to have some nice green space, because it looks like you're putting quite a bit more parking out behind. So that's just a comment. And I know you've already bid it, so you can't change the building, but you probably can change the landscaping if you want. Thank you.
Just a brief response to that. So the planning board did look at this very closely. There is a green built into it in the area between the police station and the fire station. It's not very large, but there is a gathering space there. The reason that we have the central driveway coming up is because the parking lot in front of Town Hall is a one-way parking lot, the way it's set up. So you wouldn't be able to come in and go out off of Westwood Glen Road, and that's why we're keeping the central the central drive that goes to both of them. But it was something that was looked at, we did consider it, and in the future, if there's a way to increase the parking area in front of the town hall to make that two-way, it could be something down the line that we might look at. But for the time being, I think that we do need the parking spaces in front of the police station just to meet the needs of the station. And we'll see how we divide the small thing we've created. I think it will be a nice public plaza there that we don't have now. Events like the Santa Claus or take place there in the parking lot. So we will now have a plaza going forward where they'll be able to do that right from Memorial Day parade.
And I guess what I was suggesting was eliminating the parking in front of the town hall.
So we do need the parking spaces. We can't eliminate them. The hope was that we could eliminate that driveway and have one driveway that gets to both the town hall and the police station parking lot. But for right now, I don't think we can do that. Maybe in the future.
This is Tony Mullen, 126 Pond Street. Just one comment, one quick question. So comment is I'd like to thank everyone here that was part of this, Mike, Nancy, Pam, and all the entire team. I think this is a great example over the last 3 years how you've really engaged the community. And this is the way good government should work. So thank you for how you're involved in the community. And tonight's just an example of that. My question, maybe relatively simple question, is assuming we get approval in May, when would when would we be able to move in?
19 months, 18 months from when we start. So where we are right now, if you've been by the police and town hall, you notice we're in full construction on the Deerfield Extension project. That will remain in full construction until well into July. And then August 1st, we're going to turn the project over, if we're lucky enough to have it funded at town meeting this year. We'll turn the project over to the general contractor in August, and it'll be next fall, roughly, in the next construction season, when we'll be able to move into the new facility.
Hi, Bill Burke, candidate for Congress. Is there any state or local or federal money available for the project?
Wish there were, there isn't.
With all the new laws that the state has passed that guarantee better construction, should a miracle happen and this come in under budget, is there any provision for finishing the second floor area that seems to be able to successfully hold another section? In other words, if there's extra money, why don't you frame it in now while you can? While the costs are lower than they will be 50 years from now.
Actually, as I remember, and Tim probably can speak to this better, we did explore the possibility of framing the room out and not finishing it, leaving it as unfinished space. Actually, it was more expensive to do that, as I remember it.
We also, the project's gone through a pretty extensive programming exercise, so like the spaces that are there have been designated for a reason. We would, to do it without knowing what we're going to do with it would probably not be efficient for the town to do. So, because we did look at it, we did talk about what we do there, and it really wasn't something that we thought was a worthwhile investment in money. And I don't think, even if the job goes very well, a lot of the money in that budget is already committed to contracts. It's not going to save that kind of money. It would, you know, it would hopefully save some money, but not enough to frame up the second floor.
The other thing to point out is that we literally went out to bid when we went out to bid, so we go to town meeting with a very tight budget. So we're not going to be budgeting at the far end at the 16 million that we would have had to have asked for if we hadn't bid and know what the prices are. We're going to be able to bid something under 14 million because we do know what the prices are. We have solid bids that we can award the next day. Jack, did you? No? Oh, sorry, again.
I have another question. I think this is more for Nancy. When you were, I think it was the last slide where you were looking at what the projections are for future build-outs. And I have a son who is a freshman in high school. And one issue I see very lacking in this town is a community recreation center. I think there's not a lot for teenagers and middle school kids to do. Despite great efforts of the library, despite great efforts of the schools to do some after-school programming, I just think that's really missed, and I think it can somewhat relate to the police work. Because if you guys are busy picking up teenagers who are doing things because they're bored, and negative things because they're bored, this might provide a better opportunity, a more positive opportunity for not only teenagers, but for the whole town. So I'm wondering how you're going to prioritize the things that you have listed here. And to me, even though I have a child in the school system, that kind of rises to the top as far as an overall community need. And now that we're talking about the second floor, unused space, I'm wondering, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but could we possibly use that as kind of a temporary community something until, because I don't know, that, I mean, believe me, I actually said to my friend Michelle here, if I won the lottery when it was so hot, I would have donated money to this town for a community recreation center. That's how necessarily I think it is. Unfortunately, I don't have that money right now, but.
Let's buy you a few tickets.
I don't have a specific answer for you, but I just want to acknowledge your interest in that. It's been a long time that people have been considering that. It's one of the reasons we acquired the Islington Church and turned it into the Islington Community Center. There had been, yeah, and we do the best with what we have. I mean, we are so fortunate where we have come from for what we have in the town now for facilities. I'm not sure the second floor of the police station is the right place to have it. But you're thinking outside the box, and I have to tell you, if I gave you my ideas that were outside of the box for this public safety task force, your head would spin. I kept them in check because you get to the point where you have to be pragmatic. But your point's well taken, and that's why it's on the list. We know there's a need. We've invested a lot in our fields, our athletic fields over the years, which is huge. We had the article at town meeting last fall to acquire the land from First Parish Church. Should we want to expand the fields there? We're trying to think of all these things. I think if you take anything away from tonight, I hope you take away that we are trying to meet the multiple demands of the town smartly, efficiently, and prudently. We're not trying to be spendthrift, but we're trying to do things right. We've had a history of sometimes not doing it quite right. We have a middle school gym that isn't right size. We added on here at one point and then quickly realized that we didn't add on enough. You know, live and learn, but also we are in a better fiscal position than we have ever been before. And I've been involved in this town government for 20 years, and it was a different town before that. To be doing what we're doing today is extraordinary. And I say that very proudly because the people in town have supported that. We're all in it together. And we wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't have this collective community that cares. And we are not satisfying everybody, but I think we're doing a really good job in meeting the needs of the town. So, I don't know, maybe that's a good place to land. I want to, on behalf of everybody who came out tonight from the town, thank all of you who took the time to listen to all this. We'll hang around for a little bit. Mark May 2nd on your calendars. It's an important town meeting. We have a lot to decide and we can't do it without the voters there. And follow up anything we can do to help explain things further, we're happy to do so. So thank you all for coming.